Hi friends, I'm Olga Koelsch and welcome to my studio. And today we're gonna paint transparent tulip. And many of you asked me either on Instagram or in other social medias to show me how I paint my transparent flowers, which is a highlight, I think, in my feed. And yes, I'm going to start the whole series of painting transparent flowers. I will try to make it in very easy way so you could start from the scratch and see how these transparency feelings appears, and leave me in comments which flowers you would like to paint next. Let's start. To paint transparent flowers you will need a very diluted color, and I advise you to prepare two brushes, for example a bigger brush for the pale parts and the fine brush for the accents. It will make the process easier. So first I take very diluted color and start with the first petal. Doesn't matter from which you start. I like to start something a little bit aside of the front, and I just cover the petal with our very light color. Here I use a mixture of Quinacridone rose and one Dyke, but we try to paint it monochrome, so you could take anything you like. So, and now with the fine brush, at the same moment I go very carefully along the edges, just along the edges. Sometimes it intersects and colors are mixing, and now I take the other brush and drag out the color here on this side, and I want to make some accents here on the top of the petal where the main vine of the tulip goes. And again, very carefully I go along all the petal right to the bottom, and approximately from the middle of the petal I more press on the belly of the brush to make lines thicker. And I distribute here the darker color. I try to keep the darker part in the bottom of the petal, and I still have something left on the tip of the brush. And now with very brave move again I paint the main vine, and when it is still dry I try to add some other vines which goes just out of the main vine. I do not pay that much attention to it. We will be back here later. So let's say one petal is ready. It's important to leave each petal dry. So for now I will take and paint the petal which does not intersect with the ready one. We need much more diluted color, almost water. So I just distribute everything. I try to keep the middle of the petal lighter, and with the other brush, with the tip of the brush, I go along the edge. I like when watercolor distributes by itself, so I do not wait until the petal is dry We could try this the other time. It will give us a very different feeling. And on this side, approximately from the middle, I press much more on the belly of the brush to make the line thicker. And with the tip of the brush, I slightly show the direction of the main vine of the petal, which is approximately here. This is done. We wait until it's all dry. Our petals are dry. I'm going to paint the other petal. Again, very diluted color. Now I very carefully distribute it right above on the other petals. I try not to press too much on the paper, not to destroy the previous layers. Just like this is enough. We will add all the accents on the top. Again, the same thing, I go along the edge. Sometimes I try to intersect with the wet part. Sometimes I go a little bit nearby, press more in the bottom and make it very fine here. And with dry, clean brush, I distribute the colors, so to avoid this dotted line feeling. With some color on the tip of the brush, I paint. No, it's a bit too wet. I need to wait a little bit or take a more bold color and paint the middle line. And now you already could see this transparency feeling. I want to accentuate this left side of this petal a bit more. And to make this, I just go again along the petal and watercolors mix by itself. And I just help with dry and clean brush. This petal now, okay, very diluted and very careful moves. Here will be an intersection, carefully. I like when there is a little bit of overlap. It makes the painting more artistically interesting. So I like to hold the paper so it's convenient for me to paint, and I will start from the bottom, pressing on the belly of the brush, thick line, and then I just go a little bit up at the end of the petal, at the top of the petal. I make very fine lines, and I'm juggling with the brushes. You see, it's very handy to have two brushes in work instead of one. Really saves your time, which is precious with watercolor, and also colors. No need to grab every time new pigment on it, and just distribute. It's also nice to distribute the color along the vines, along the place where vines could grow. And in this petal, the main vine will be about here. You still could see it because it is thick, and small vines comes in this direction. Now again, we need to dry it completely. So now we have to paint two petals which are on the back side of our tulip. Just with the tip of the brush, very carefully, I draw the place for them. And I do not cover, this time I do not cover all the petal, all the place for petal with water. Just I water in a little bit area, a little bit around the edges, and with my second brush I again go along this watering part, along the edges of the petal, and make it thinner at the bottom, main vine, and with clean and almost dry brush I distribute colors, and I smooth a little bit the vine, but the main purpose is to smooth these sharp and precise line a little bit, to make it more watercolorish, more tender. And the vine, of course we could paint vines and details after we're done, but I like when we paint it during the process, then the paper is still a bit wet. It looks more natural, more whimsical, and more tender, like this. And the other petal, again same thing. This time we do not cover all the area. I just think how it will look nicer, because before I find a place here, but now I think this petal will be really nice if it intersects here and a little bit here. So I'm watering just the area around. I try to keep it more as translucent as possible. Like the shape, I want to correct the shape a little bit. And our second brush comes into the play across the edges, along the edges. Thicker line in the bottom, because the petals are thicker on the bottom. If you take any petal of any flower, you will notice that they are very tender on the top and very, very, very gentle and very, very thick on the bottom, and we want to show this. So now I would like to wait until this part is dry to finalize, to add some accents here, but it's better to wait. So now I'm moving to the stem, and for the stem I just take one Dyke mixed with Quinacridone rolls, and I just make the first layer medium transparent, I would say, about this. Just nice to paint the stem in one move, challenging enough. And with the second brush I'm making accents. Again, I go along the stem, and this time the darker it is the better. With the tip of the brush, this is too wet, I'm afraid. I will distribute it later. Just again trying to do it in one go, in one move. clean and almost dry brush, we make everything smooth. We drag out the color. Already got a little bit too dry. That's okay. Here a little bit. You see, once you remove the color, it starts to shine, and that's the feeling we would like to get when we paint transparent flowers. We will be back to this part later. Now we just paint these two leaves, which is a treat. I'm thinking I will take even the bigger brush. I have a squirrel brush, and just looks a bit weird because I think one of my kids left it in the jar, which you're never supposed to do. So with very diluted color, I fill in the leaf, one leaf. Again, we always paint one by one. One petal, another petal, one leaf. When it dries, the other leaf, and so on and so on. Be patient. We are almost there. We leave again with darker and bolder color. Go along the leaf, more press at the end, and with dry and clean brush we distribute the colors, and not only distribute, we distribute it along the main vines, which makes it looks very natural. Oops. It's not very handy for me, so I turn the paper, and I will go along this edge carefully. Make it closer. So carefully go along the edge and distribute colors, and add some lines and accents. One leaf. Yes, one leaf is drying. I want to paint this very typical tulips pastel. I just take a very bold mixture of Quinacridone rose and Dyke, mostly Dyke. I want it to be more on the purple side, and just like this. If you doubt how the pastel looks like, you could just Google some tulips botanical illustrations, and they have very precise pictures of what's inside the flowers. So this part is not transparent, and that's why I paint it in the very bold colorways, and some stamens. So very bold, the most bold you could get. Tulip has 6 stamens. We could show that. One, two, three, four, 5, 6. Ready. So now we have middle of the flower, and we are back to this leaf. Same procedure, overlapping. Carefully. And go along the edge. And I'm sorry for sometimes I know I'm making weird poses. I'm still in the process of learning to paint and to talk at the same time. It's I could do these two things separately, no problem. But all together, I'm still learning. So I hope you're okay with that, and that's not that annoying as it could be. I know. So let's distribute. I suddenly mixed all these two brushes, and that's very confusing for me, probably for you as well, but I have a lot of color on this. I do not want to waste it, so I will paint differently. But that's really enough with leaves. We do not want them to be the main accent of the painting, because our main accent is, of course, the flower. Just tiny, tiny final touches. For example, this petal seems to be a bit lost. I will go just around. And now it's back again. Clean brush, and I distribute the color, drag out the color. I want to make it smooth, clean for me to keep it like this. And I will distribute it here. And now you see all our petals are nicely separated one from each other, and they show us the structure of the flower from inside. And I could just add a little bit of the main vines just on the front petals. No need to do it for all the petals. I would like to go one more time along the bottom parts to make to give it more weight, which is nice, and also it brings a nice contrast, very light, tender on the top, and heavy or strong in the bottom. And this is our tulip. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you had fun, and I hope you got a feeling of how to make this transparency effect appear. And please leave me feedback in the comments, and tell me which flower in transparent technique you would like to paint next. I would be so happy to follow your wishes and recommendations. Subscribe my channel, follow me on Instagram, olga.koelsch, and have a nice day. Bye bye.